Hello there, my friends. I hope you're all doing well. Thank you all so very much for joining me for this episode of the Outdoor Gear Review. This is After the Hike, and today we are discussing the Double Trouble Creeper Walk 2014 trip. The awesome trip that I got to do with my twin brother. So much fun. I know you guys really liked that video. It was a great time. My brother's a very, very cool guy. So why don't we all grab a cup of coffee, let's get comfortable, and let's start discussing this trip. We definitely have a lot to talk about, lots of things to go over, some bloopers, some pretty funny stuff. Let's get started. I know that a lot of you guys were wondering, why is it called the Creeper Walk? And that is because it is the Virginia Creeper Trail. That's the name of the trail that we were on. And basically it's a 35-mile trip that starts in Abington, Virginia, and goes all the way up to White Top, Virginia, right at the North Carolina border. So that is why it's called Creeper. It's not just the fact that my brother and I are being creepy on the Creeper Trail, which we are. There's no doubt about that. But it is definitely a very, very cool place. The Creeper Trail is known more for biking than it is for actually hiking and stuff like this. But overall, my friends, the trip was a ton of fun. We did 34 miles in a little bit less than 12 hours. We got started around 5:30 p.m. and we were able to finish that trip by 5 o'clock in the morning the following day. So it was 11 and a half hours, something like that, 34 miles. And I tell you, that trip absolutely flew by. One thing that really helped out was that we did it at nighttime. We were able just to kind of just go through the dark, have a good time. The trip is pretty long, as of course 34 miles, but when you're actually walking this, a lot of the scenery looks the same. You're just kind of out in the woods. And after you've done this a couple of times, it can kind of drag on, you know? It kind of goes slow, so doing it at nighttime really helped speed things up. But, you know, as the saying goes, time flies when you're having fun. The conditions were absolutely perfect. They were a little bit breezy when we first got into town, and the temperatures were in about the mid-60s, something like that. Now, over the course of the night, it was actually very comfortable. We were able to do most of our hiking in just our shirts. By the time we got back around 5 o'clock in the morning, it was starting to get cold, temperatures were dropping. So really, I mean, the conditions were perfect. Not hot, we didn't have to sweat our brains out or freeze. So really, the conditions were great for that sort of trip. Now when it comes to wildlife, we of course saw some deer. We saw some turkeys, saw some geese, heard coyotes, and of course we saw all the neighborhood critters, the dogs, the cows, the horses, stuff like that. It was later in that night when we were hiking around, and we started hearing the coyotes, and they were pretty much just all around us. It was a cool experience. I've always liked listening to coyotes. They sound crazy. They sound like they're kind of laughing at you, going insane. They were all around us, of course, never had any issues. Now when it comes to coyotes, folks, coyote attacks are really uncommon. You know, I actually looked this up myself here, and it says that between 1988 and 1997, only 48 attacks were confirmed with coyotes. It's extremely rare. I've never known anybody to ever get attacked by coyotes, and I've been around coyotes just about my entire life. Now, take a look at dogs, and each year there's like 300,000 confirmed cases of dog attack. A lot of people really do seem to have a fear of coyotes, and the truth is, they're not that big of a deal. Of course, there will be that rare occurrence when something happens. That's life, I guess. Now, talking about animal attacks, when we got back from that trip, I was kind of laying in bed, I was on Facebook, and there's a site that I subscribe to, or liked, or whatever you call it, that does like scanner feeds from Virginia there. And it turns out that at some point in time that night while we were walking, there was a bear attack on a horse. I've never heard of a bear attacking a horse, but it actually killed it. That's pretty crazy, and it wasn't too far away from where we were hiking at. So definitely interesting indeed. Like I said, I've never heard of a bear attacking a horse, so that's pretty unusual. Now, as I said, we started hiking around 5:30, and we were able to stop and have dinner around 9:30. We had the Mountain House meals, which were pretty darn good. The Mountain House meal that I had was chicken and mashed potatoes, and the instructions basically called for you to submerge the chicken in water, wait a couple of minutes, and then take that chicken out, put the mashed potatoes in, and then put it all together. But I decided just to follow the first step, put the chicken in, dump the water on it, And then I just dumped the mashed potatoes in and let it sit there for about 10 minutes, and it was good to go. So, yeah, just a tad bit ridiculous on that. But still, the flavor-wise, they were awesome. My brother, he had a chicken and rice meal that was pretty darn good, too. Now, while we were sitting there having dinner, up on the horizon, this helicopter comes up, and it had a spotlight on, and it actually just flew, not over us, but very, very close. I don't know, just scanning the fields, it was interesting to see. Earlier that night, we smelled smoke, and we're wondering if maybe there wasn't some sort of small little fire or something like that. Now, we reached the halfway point about 11:50. I think it was actually 11:47 when we got into Abington. And really, we just walked into town, took a look at the train, turned around, and then we started coming back. We did sit on a bench for about 10 minutes, popped some more painkiller, I believe, and took off trucking. Now, when it comes to our entertainment for the night, of course, we talked the entire time. But we did have some old cell phones that we put into airplane mode to save battery. And we had put some MP3s on there, some different movies, basically just converted a movie into MP3 format just to listen to. And I tell you what, that really did help pass the time. And over the course of this trip, of the 12 hours, we listened to quite a bit. Let's see, the first movie that we listened to was Phenomenon with John Travolta. Not a bad movie to listen to. We also listened to a documentary on the Chernobyl incident in Russia. That was pretty interesting, no doubt about it. We also listened to about 3 hours of Stephen King's It. Yeah. It still was pretty good to listen to. I haven't watched that since I was a kid. So, yep, not too bad. Now, of course, my friends, you guys got to meet my awesome twin brother. And I tell you what, that was a lot of fun. I'm glad you guys were able to meet him. Now, based on the comments alone, you guys really did enjoy this trip. You enjoyed meeting my brother. And just like many of you guys said, he is a cool guy. He's really, really funny. And let me tell you what, he had me cracking up just about all night long. Probably one of my favorite things about that trip, one of the funniest moments, is when we stopped to have dinner. We're sitting on the benches, and he's talking about how it's such a beautiful place. It's super duper nice. And, you know, the bench is placed perfectly, whatever. And then he goes on to say something along the lines of that, you know, it's a real shame that he's going to have to burn that place to the ground when he leaves. That is pretty darn funny. I will go ahead and play that clip for you now.
You know, I really like this bench. The location and everything is perfect.
Right.
Yep, I agree.
I really hate that I'm going to have to burn it to the ground before we leave.
That is pretty darn funny. All in all, the trip was fantastic. We had a really, really good time. Laughed the entire time, talked the entire time. And when we got done, we weren't that sore. I had one minor blister on one of my toes. My brother had a couple on his feet. But in the times that we'd done it previously, man, we'd get done and then hobble. This time, it wasn't that big of a deal. We've been walking just about every single weekend, and I think that's really paid off. Our endurance, strength, and stamina is really up there, so that really did help a lot. 34 miles is nothing to sneeze at. That's a pretty big deal. And I tell you what, if you're not used to walking such distances, I don't recommend that you just go out and do it. You will have blisters like crazy if your feet aren't used to such conditions. And I tell you what, you could possibly pull something, rip something. You really have to kind of work up to that, just like anything else. If you guys are a fan of my Facebook page, you guys know that I became ill after doing this trip. And so did my brother. And then so did my wife. And then his wife. And at first I thought I might have been suffering from dehydration. It just felt kind of crappy. I ended up throwing up one time. And then I went on to have a fever. But it actually turned out that it was a case of food poisoning since everyone in our families got it. And we had just went out the day before we went out hiking to a place together. So yes, get home from that trip. And actually when I was finishing up the trip walking, I was feeling a little bit nauseous. And my brother said he was as well. So get home, I rested for a couple hours, wake up, throw up. Just once, not too bad. And then for the next 18 hours after that point, I had a fever about 103, 104. I hallucinated for about 18 hours straight. And the entire time, I was thinking about some sort of wooden furniture. In my mind, I had solved this great wooden furniture mystery. I mean, seriously, I thought about wooden furniture and whatever it was for like 18 hours straight. I would wake up every hour thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I solved this problem. I need to write it down, and then I'd go back to sleep. And just constantly waking up, just soaked in sweat. Honestly, as far as being sick goes, it was pretty fun. Sadly, I have no idea what I was actually thinking about or what problem I was actually solving. Alright, my friends, so we've talked about the trip now. Let's go ahead and switch over to the gear aspect. And the first piece of gear that we will talk about is our Fjallraven Forest 35 pack. Now, the total weight of our pack with the water equaled out to be about 30 pounds. That was quite a bit for such a trip, but I wanted to make sure that I brought a lot of water, and I definitely did. I brought 3 liters of water in a hydration bladder, and I also brought 4 16-ounce bottles of water. And I consumed almost all of it over the course of that trip. 34 miles and 12 hours of hiking, you need lots and lots of water. Along that trail are a number of different rivers, or it might just be one, I don't know. It seems like there's 2 that merge together. But I could have gotten water from those sources and purified it in one way or another. But since it was nighttime, I didn't want to be stopping in the dark to try to do all this stuff. And that's why I decided just to carry lots and lots of water. Now, one thing I should mention about that Fjallraven pack is that it is actually a hunting pack. There are backpacking versions of it which have like a hydration sleeve. That version does not. And so basically I filled the pack full, I took the hydration bladder, and I just put it on top. And that way I could just quickly grab it and refill my bottles when I needed to. And when it came to actually filling up those bottles, I would just blow air into the hydration bladder and then let the force of that air push the water into my bottles. I can actually show you a video of that now.
Just to pressurize it.
The pack itself was super, super comfortable. The back of it allowed for a lot of ventilation. So, I mean, I hiked the entire time and didn't have a sweaty back at all, which was super duper nice. And I tell you what, that really is beneficial for conditions like what we were hiking in. It was getting late. By morning, it was pretty cold. And if you were soaked in sweat, that could definitely bring you to the edge of hypothermia. So, being able to stay dry the entire night was a huge plus. Normally, after a hike like that, my shoulders are a little bit sore. Not this time. That pack really did a good job of just being nice and comfortable all the way through. Of course, with all things, there are some negatives, and that pack definitely has one huge glaring negative. And that is the water bottle pockets on the side of the pack. They're too high up. So, I mean, I could barely get my fingers onto the bottles, but I wasn't able to actually pull them up. So I would have to get my brother to help me with this. He would have to grab the bottles and put them back up for me. The shoes that I wore for this trip were the Vask Juxt. I actually happen to have them right here. Now, if you guys follow the channel, you know that these are my favorite shoes. And this is actually my second pair. The previous pair had, golly, I think about probably around 1,000 miles of biking and hiking time on them. And I have to say that I'm a little bit disappointed with these shoes. I developed an issue with the heel on my previous shoes, and I completely wore off the backside. Sadly, that is happening to these shoes again. There's something about this rubber that's super, super soft, and you can see there how it's just starting to deteriorate. Yes, I do have hundreds of miles on these shoes already. I got these at Christmas time as a Christmas present for my wife. Thanks, baby. But I have other shoes that I've been wearing for much, much longer than these, and there's no issues. This just happens to be an issue with the Juxt. It may be that they are using some sort of lighter rubber to keep the weight of the shoes down. I'm not entirely sure. I'm actually going to contact them and see what they have to say about it. Nonetheless, great shoes. They really help on that trail. Very lightweight, very breathable as well. Our stove was the Optimus Crux. Did a fantastic job. We used that in conjunction with the Toaks titanium pot, 750 milliliters. Again, fantastic job. The Crux stove is super lightweight. It functions so incredibly well. It's very, very efficient. We were able to boil water for myself, for my brother, for coffee, for him and myself, just like that. I mean, super duper fast. It's a great stove. The Toaks titanium pot, again, fantastic. Great pot. The Fjallraven Barrett trousers that I wore, absolutely amazing. Now, in the future, you guys will see more of my twin brother. I'm going to make sure that he comes up for maybe a camping trip. Definitely an episode of the Campfire Chronicles, which we will be starting up soon. And for that episode, I do have a guest, which you guys will enjoy, I'm sure. going to be a lot of fun. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention was this. When we first got into Damascus, we're heading to Abington. We're still in the town. We're going past the park. At this picnic table is this little boy who was probably, I don't know, 8 or 9. And he's sitting with his grandma. And he just looks over at us, just super friendly. And he's like, hi. I love Damascus. Everybody there is super friendly, no doubt about it. And we probably walked another 20 feet. And we started talking to some young kids who had a table. And, of course, their minds were absolutely blown that my brother and I were twins. They thought that was freaking awesome. We had a good time talking to them. And, of course, I had to say that my brother's the evil one, because that's what I always say. My friends, I want to say thank you all so very much for watching this episode of the Outdoor Gear Review. Thank you for joining my brother and I on the Creeper Walk 2014, 34 miles, 12 hours. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. If you're not a fan of our Facebook page, go ahead and like it. You'll find a link in the description box below. To finish up this video, I'll show you guys some outtakes, some cool parts. I'll see you guys around. Be well. What a gorgeous day it is out here in Damascus. Absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you very much for joining us today. I have a special surprise for you. Today,
We have made it to Damascus and we are ready to begin. What do you want to be called on this anyway?
What's that?
What do you want your, like, a special name, or you want me to call you Ira, or?
How about like Trailblazer? Just Ira, just Ira.
All right.
Yeah.
So Trailblazer and myself are ready to go.
Dude, I have to get used to this.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, because you're like, walk off and like.
But guys, it is 12 miles, or not an easy walk by
No.
any means.
Yeah, I don't know if people are meant to really do nearly 40 miles.
Right.
You know?
Probably not.
Let alone overnight.
Yeah. No sleep.
Yeah.
All night long.
Yep.
Yep. And basically, electrolytes is what plants crave.
You know what I mean?
Pretty lightweight.
Yeah. Then they put titanium in Cousin Eddie's head. You know, I really like this bench. The location and everything is perfect.
Right.
Yep.
Yep, I
I
agree.
really hate that I'm going to have to burn it to the ground before we leave.
Yes, it does have what plants crave. Has electrolytes.
That's right. That's right.
And it comes with a little chub. I gave you a little chub. I gave him some sausage.
Yeah, whatever.